Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the PetaPixel Podcast. We've only been off for 1 week, but it's actually been more than 2 weeks since I've been in my podcasting space, and I didn't know where anything was, and I was trying to set it up, and I don't even remember how anymore. And if anybody knows where my LED backlight went, like, I don't know. If you see one just on the street,
yeah,
be like, that's probably Jordan's. Yeah,
very spooky.
It's a moody episode of the PetaPixel Podcast, so we can talk about, like, what do we want to see from Micro Four Thirds a little later. But, you know, before we get to that, I think it's important for our listeners and viewers to get to know all of us a little better. I like to kick things off with a question. Guys, I want to know, in, like, junior high and high school, what was your sport? What was the best physical activity that you excelled at?
I'll go first. Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I became a really good dice roller. I got another sport that I did was painting miniatures. Another sport that I did was you have to hold like these cards are called Magic the Gathering cards. You hold a whole bunch of them in your hand, and sometimes like you have to hold. It's pretty great. You got to lay them out and stuff. So
you
I would say they're more. It's like a mental athletics.
Don't they make you do them? Like, which was the one you would dread the least if the gym teacher's like, all right, our sport today is blank?
Oh, like an actual sport?
Yeah.
I tried out for soccer once and almost threw up. I remember that pretty distinctly. I know, sure. I'm not a big runner. I've got flat feet, so running is not fun for me. So that was my least favorite. But I did do a lot of martial arts as a kid. I mean, that would be a serious athletic sport that I did. But yeah.
Well, because flat feet hurt more, right? If you get hit by one?
No, flat feet are fine because flat feet meld really nicely onto like a wooden floor, in a dojo. So
or a human temple,
or a human temple, or flattening your enemies beneath your powerful legs. Yeah, that's what I did.
Jaron?
Figuratively, like not literally, figuratively in D&D, like I'd roll for like a kick and see if I hit, and then roll damage. Yeah.
Well, unlike Chris, I seem to have been blessed with athletic ability. That's
why you went to Gonzaga.
Basketball was one of the sports unfortunately, I have the ability. I do not have the height. So like I was capped at how much I could do basketball but I was on our varsity swim team in college. I was on the varsity track team. I did long jump, high jump. I did sprinting. I did varsity cross country. I didn't play football. I could have. I didn't play soccer. I should have. I did that in college. I did intramural soccer.
I have to just undo my pants a little bit. Sorry, guys. Pardon me one sec.
I love sports, and I was really good at a lot of sports. Like not really, really good, but like I can play sports. And you
don't love sports as much as Jordan, though.
I like baseball. I just like I can really.
I was gonna say, like, before this, I was like, I bet Jaron's gonna say baseball. I don't know why. That just seemed like it would fit.
I should have, but like whenever we played like wiffle ball in the gym when it was like raining outside and we couldn't go out during gym practice, I would just like rake homers into left field, just because.
Damn.
Yeah.
See, my narrative is the complete opposite of Jaron's because I was actually a really good basketball player when I was young. And I distinctly remember we took a trip to Eastern Canada when I was in junior high. And one of the guys is like, oh, you're actually really good. You should try out for the team next year. And I was like, yeah, I am going to try out for the team.
I am really good.
And then puberty hit me like a truck over the course of that. And basically, if I was on the court, it was like I was like on stilts trying to play basketball. Or actually, no, it's like I was a medieval person who had just been on the rack for 2 hours, and they were like, "Now go shoot some hoops, buddy."
So
none of my limbs worked.
Those long limbs.
No, so suddenly I was tall. I should have been great at it, and at that point, I lost all skill, all coordination, and I'm still waiting for it to recover in middle age. So yeah, I'm going to try and keep that dream alive. And
I don't want to disappoint you.
My son is like,
I had a similar situation to you where I like got really tall. So in 6th grade, I was as tall as I am now. So like I was
That's
towering
weird.
Over kids.
What
so
happened?
I played center when I was then, and then suddenly everyone else's puberty hit, and then I was like, oh, you need to play guard. I never learned how to dribble correctly, so I'm not a very good ball handler. I'm just a straight like 3-point shooter after that because I couldn't transition.
I was like a year ahead, sort of thing, just because of my birth date, not because I'm smart or anything like that. And I was always tiny and small and wiry, but look at me now.
Jordan, you were going to say something about your kid.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's actually like pretty athletic and all about sports. So it's like, do I tell him?
Freakishly tall. He's freakishly tall.
That there's like, buddy, there's a chance that in a couple of years, suddenly you could lose all of this power and skills. So,
dude,
maybe find a backup hobby or something like that in case disaster strikes your athleticism.
Don't project your childhood onto your children, Jordan. Come on.
It's called genetics. It's not an interest matter.
Is Ev athletic?
I think in high school, definitely, but she hasn't really pursued like anything like that afterwards. There is, yeah. We'll see how it all pans out. But this has been a long one. We should like start this show where we talk about a whole bunch of Canon stuff, and we do tech support and all of our
2 weeks of news to cover, and then we've got some tech support, which is great. But our main story this week is, since we just saw the announcement of a brand new OM system camera, let's talk about what Micro Four Thirds absolutely still needs this year
to thrive.
To be still relevant? We'll get into it.
I'm the optimist.
All right, but before we get to the show, of course, we always appreciate our sponsors that make it all possible. And the sponsor for the PetaPixel Podcast is Excire. And we've talked about the products before. It's really nice software because as a photographer, you end up collecting a whole bunch of imagery, and it can be a real pain to organize it, to cull it, to get rid of duplicates, to make sure that you can find stuff afterwards. If you're like me and you just throw all of your images into a closet and shut the door and just pretend it doesn't exist, when it comes time to then find an image, it can be really difficult. But Excire gives you really powerful AI-based tools to find those things. So first off, I can add keywords to my photos, or I can actually have Excire do that as well in an intelligent fashion. I can search by those keywords. I can search by specific AI prompts. I can say find me all the pictures of people, or I could then go beyond and say, find me all the pictures of people relaxing at the beach. I mean, it's really cool that you could just put in prompts and get very specific, and it will show you all the images that pertain to that. Really powerful stuff.
Yeah, and what's also cool is you're often looking for one person. So if there's someone that's popping up a lot in your photos, you just tag it as hey, this is this person. A lot like what you'll see with the basic phone apps that you've got, but now you can apply it to your professionally shot images and say, hey, it's this person, and then you'll be able to find them very easily. Or, if it's a client, you don't even know their name, you can say oh, this was someone with this color hair, and I want photos of them with their eyes open and things like that, or the locations they were in. Just makes it really straightforward to kind of find those images. But then, as Chris mentioned, the culling is great too. I don't want to wade through out of focus images or the blinky blink images. That's a huge pain. Yeah. And every time I push the shutter on a photo camera, I'm am I just giving myself more work later? So it's nice to have almost like an assistant editor to keep tabs on everything that you've got going on there.
And the best part too is if you're worried about all this AI stuff and privacy, this is all run locally on your computer. There's no uploading to a server. Your images aren't going anywhere. They're not getting, cloned or pulled away or anything like that. Don't worry about that. It's all local on your computer. It just makes your life a lot easier. And Excire works with 2 separate programs, so you can make it work for how you want to have your workflow go. So first off, you can use Excire Foto 2025. That's the full standalone program.
Whole shebang.
Yeah, it does the culling, it does the searches, really cool stuff. But if you just want to have a nice search engine that's AI-based in Lightroom, you can use Excire Search 2025. This is a Lightroom plugin. It doesn't do the culling, but it does all the powerful search. So that when you're going through all your Lightroom catalogs, you have that access right there. Really good stuff. Give it a try. I mean, you can download a 14-day free trial and just see if it works for you, but you can also get a lifetime subscription. None of this sort of monthly subscription stuff. It's a lifetime license. You use the special discount code PetaPixel and you'll get 15% off of that. So definitely check it out.
Thanks to Excire for sponsoring this episode of the PetaPixel Podcast. Let's get into our gigantic stack of news.
3-hour pod.
Hopefully not. We're going to start with the PPA and their crisis of leadership. Now, to make sure everyone knows, by the time you're listening to this, the what I'm going to talk about here, having like they had like a big vote meeting or whatever, already occurred, and we will have a story following up what happened there. But I do want to back up and explain how we got to where we are now. So the Professional Photographers of America, which has about 35,000 members nationwide, and operates Imaging USA, which took place this week. As we're recording this, it's happening right now in Dallas. They had a really weird situation happen with their leadership, where to try and simplify this as best I can, there's a very convoluted system of governance that they have here. They have both a board of directors and like this leadership council, and then the members. Anyway, the board of directors, which controls everything, they had a vote for the new board of directors. Someone named Allison won that vote, but then was forced out by the previous board for reasons that were just essentially boils down to, it sounds like, we don't like you.
Yeah, you're not a good hang, seems to be the subtext here.
Yeah, and essentially they just broke all of the governance rules that they had in place for the PPA. And the 10 previous presidents of the board wrote a letter stating that they were dissatisfied with this. And the council, who elects the board, by the way, called for a special meeting in the Texas area near Dallas to go over an attempt to recall the board for all of this. That's the best I can do to summarize it. I'll link to the article below if you want to read everything. And even that, by the way, is still a summary.
It's a lot.
There's way more. It's way more complicated. But what it comes down to is some catty chicanery inside of the PPA. And I don't know. It just does not make the PPA look good.
I just found it is very much like high school politics at a large scale is what it all felt like reading it to me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the ongoing drama as this trade show goes on, because I'm sure we're going to get some scoops of other people being bullying and condescending, and it's all going to be weird and unprofessional. So I'm looking forward to the updates.
Yeah, you just think like the PPA probably makes a good deal of money just from their memberships, but then also you think Imaging USA, what they charge companies to show up there, and they have all the big companies there. There's a lot of money in the PPA.
Yeah, well, most people use it for insurance. That was my understanding, right?
Yeah, and it's
a lot of pro photographers.
At least from what I've seen in comments on PetaPixel, the insurance isn't actually that good anymore. So
I'm sure, like there's lots of associations, lots of photographic associations, lots of clubs. And I mean, they are integral to providing people things like these services we're talking about, but also a forum to meet, to collaborate on projects and stuff. So they can be very positive, but there's so many out there. So if you guys have any associations that you belong to, even if it's like a local club, it'd be cool to hear about that. But I know we've got similar associations in Canada, and they've had their own controversies and problems. It always sounds like a real source of stress for a lot of members, to be honest.
The only membership to join is a PetaPixel membership, totally drama free. Yeah.
What a great
what a segue.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Well, if you're interested in reading more, again, the link in the description below. And I will also put a link to our follow-up, which I know is happening as we're recording this. I've had our team is looking at what actually happened at this meeting. I have no idea. So
tell me Jeremy Gray's on the floor getting the hot goss.
No, he's reading a blog post from someone who was on the floor. So we really haven't been able to get firsthand information from the PPA. They have not responded to any of our emails. I called them, by the way. I called the PPA and nobody picked up the phone. Yeah, nobody picked up, which is not a great sign. No. And then I also emailed the leadership of the board and attempted to call them too, and they also did not respond. So,
wow. Shady.
We have to get secondhand sourcing here because it's just like they're not talking. So, at any rate, let's move on to something more exciting and fun.
This is also a mystery, though. This is also a mystery.
So a couple of weeks ago, Yashica. It was rumored / somebody got an announcement ahead of time to be making 2 new point and shoot cameras called the City series, the City 100 and the City 200. We got official announcement details last week, and they don't make a ton of sense.
Nope.
So I don't know. Chris, you read this article, right? Do you have some questions about what they're promising here?
So, I mean, the Yashica name is used for a lot of products, and they tend to be very, I don't know, what's a nice way to say it? Entry-level products?
They won worst camera of the year 3 years ago, I remember distinctly, with the Y35.
But look, we're going to get our hands on the City 100 and the City 200. We're going to play with them. And so it seems like, again, we don't have all the details, but it seems like both cameras are very similar. They just have different kinds of zoom. So the City 100 has like a 3x zoom, kind of a 10x zoom on the City 200. And the mystery is a two-part. It's how big is the sensor inside this camera and what's going on with the megapixel count that the Yashica cameras are offering. So the general thought is that these have type 1/3, I mean 3.06 size chips, which are it's basically like old smartphone size sensors. That would give us roughly like a 25 to 77 millimeter zoom full frame equivalent in the City
Makes
100. Sense. Yeah, and a 36 to 360 roughly in the City 200. So
makes sense
that
as
would
well.
That would make sense. And so there's a Sony IMX458 sensor, which very common. It's very, very likely that's what's inside this camera, which is a 13 megapixel sensor. But the Yashica menus give you all these wild options. In fact, they say this camera will capture 72 megapixel photos, and they give you options like all the way down to 5 megapixels. And it's like, what?
Yeah,
so
it's 72, 64, 48, 36, 24, 13, 8, and 5.
13's on there.
Supposed options for what you can tell. I don't know why it's giving so many. I mean, cool. But I'm still not certain how it's doing the 72.
Yeah, even the math, you're like, oh, it's a quad bay. Wait, no, that math doesn't work either.
No.
I don't know.
What works is in-camera digital adding of megapixels.
I'm
just heavy interpolation. Yeah, I think it probably is just adding pixels, right? Just a high
resolution
resizing.
Border around the outside.
Okay,
so that counts to your files.
That's not all. That's because this camera also shoots 5K video,
which this sensor is not capable of.
That's not even possible.
I don't even think this sensor is capable of 4K 60, which this also does, supposedly. So,
yeah, I mean, for that they could just do some binning or something like that to get around the slower readout on the sensor, but the 5K is absolutely baffling on that. I can see it recording slightly more than 4K, and again, just up-resing. But yeah, I mean, this is going to give you dash cam kind of image quality, not even a high-end smartphone look.
Yeah, it's cheap.
We have some image quality. At least in photos, there are some samples here, and my favorite one is the first one in the article, where there's a palm tree in the middle of the shot. If you look in the corner over by the roof line, or there's a dude who's below the palm tree. He is a wonderful, several layers of purple. This thing is aberrating like crazy.
Yeah.
You can also see the distortion in the other pictures. It is distorting badly too.
But you know what? I was looking at these photos and I'm like, they kind of look kind of cool.
You're falling for it.
And that's what people want out of these cameras. They want them to look like, toys and weird imagery and very point and shoot aesthetic. And this will definitely have it. Key things, these do have electronic flashes, which is all the rage right now. There's also a lot of digital filters you can apply. So, I mean, for what they're trying to do we really care if they can do 72 megapixels or not and how garbage it's going to look? I mean, I think that's just trying to market stuff so that people, just mentally think, oh, that's a lot. But in truth, a 13 megapixel toy camera can be fun. So I don't know. We'll see. We're going to try them, right?
I'm glad you think so, because we have requested review samples. If Yashica doesn't send them, because I wrote this article that questions a lot of their specs, and they're like, I don't know. We're going to buy it. It's only $209. You're going to get one. You're going to have one regardless.
Yay.
Congratulations.
I like that there is a shoe. Now, they say hot shoe. I want to know what kind of contacts those are, but man, do I want professional strobe pictures with this piece of trash.
City
I think
100.
that's going to be great.
Yeah. I'm skeptical, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It looks like the mic cover is made out of Band-Aid material. I don't know. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. For what it's worth, the shots of the City 200 are clearly renders, while the photos of the 100 are clearly photos of it. And that makes sense because the one with the bigger zoom, the City 200, is priced at $250 and isn't going to be available until March. So it's very likely they don't have them yet. But the 100 is available. Sorry,
be
I
nice.
have to put a cough drop in so that I don't cough into my mic.
Looks like a power zoom. I like that
Achingly
you don't have
unprofessional.
to.
Achingly.
You know what these cameras are not? These cameras are not drones.
That's
a terrible segue.
You can't fly these up into the sky, possibly causing serious problems, like our next story.
A couple of weeks ago, a drone hit one of these super scooper firefighting airplanes over LA and punched a hole in its wing. Now,
Serious hole. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a picture in the article. You can see it. Now, it is illegal to fly over a wildfire unless you have very specific permissions, and those were not provided. Nobody had one at the time. Like that, you can request one, but none were granted, and none were like, as far as we know, were granted.
But what if you are a famous CEO, former CEO, and co-founder of a very influential video game company like Treyarch, who I remember from my childhood because they made a lot of Call of Duty titles.
Call of Duty.
Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk.
Peter Trip Ackerman can do whatever he wants with a DJI Mini 3 Pro drone. He can fly that over the Pacific Palisades fire if he wants to, even if it goes into the path of, giant airplanes that are trying to save lives.
Well, he did do that. Ackerman pled guilty in a bid to attempt to avoid prison time. He's going to try and get it to 150 hours of community service and repairing damages to the plane, which were $65,000.
Yikes.
That's still, I don't know. The general sentiment I've seen is that's not enough because this person took out a plane that was designed to try and stop property from being destroyed. So how much property was destroyed on the account of his actions? So we'll see. There hasn't been a sentencing hearing yet. We'll see what he actually gets, but that would be for a very rich co-founder of a video game company, former co-founder.
Pretty small slap on the wrist.
It would be.
Is his community service he has to make a new Call of Duty game? I wonder. I'm not sure.
I doubt if anybody's associated with Activision anymore, which is now a Microsoft company.
If anybody's wondering, the DJI Mini 3 was completely destroyed. I mean, it fell apart. But what's very, I think, important to understand about this, because a lot of people might think it's like really, take it very lightly, but this is a tiny drone. I mean, they weigh almost nothing, and it punched a huge hole in this airplane, right? Because we're talking about serious velocities. It's very fortunate that it didn't hit a more critical part of the airplane and cause death. Yeah. So, as much as you might think like, oh, we've got these little drones, these little small nanos and stuff and flips and things like that. And you're like, oh, you can do all this fun stuff with them. And DJI is not really enforcing no-fly zones anymore. It's kind of really up to you now to be like an intelligent human. Every situation like this just makes all the authorities that be like, wow, maybe this is not a good idea, and we're going to see this stuff get restricted again. So but yeah, I mean, this is a really obvious one. Like, I know you want to have cool footage of fire, but that's stupid. There's airplanes flying specifically low overhead on purpose, and it was really silly.
Yeah, I was trying to find it here on my phone, but when we posted our DJI Flip, someone named DVB SVB said, "Can you train them not to take out Canadian firefighting planes?" To which I responded, "Our videos are strictly intended for people who aren't selfish, opportunistic idiots." And I think that still stands long after we found out who this idiot was.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
What a dummy.
Anyways, but you know what? Those old Call of Duty games are great, so I'm going to give him a pass on those.
The Treyarch ones did tend to be the good ones, but I'm not giving him a pass on this.
No.
The next thing we're going to talk about is a very Chris thing, I think.
Is it?
Because Jordan and I are Mac guys, and we don't use mechanical keyboards, but we came across these new keycaps that are called Aperture Priority. And they just have designs that are very camera-esque, and I don't know. I think these look sweet.
They're cute. They're cute. For me though, I look at it and I'm like, oh, this just looks like work. I don't want to. I don't want to be reminded. But yeah, they've got one of the buttons is a record button, it's pulled straight off of a Panasonic or something. It looks kind of neat, and there's a neat color scheme. Yeah, the escape key. And so, yeah, it's neat. I mean, everybody's always asked me about this thing. This is just a basic Amazon. What is it? Geolang. There you go. Geolang. That's the brand. I don't know. I'm not saying that right. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not super into it. I don't want Aperture keys on mine, but I could see how somebody would. It's very cute. It's very well done.
So I'm a dummy. So explain this to me, because I keep hearing about mechanical keyboards and all that, and I love the idea of like something that's big and clunky and you can really feel the texture. But what is the point of confusing yourself when you look at your keyboard? Like, oh right, escape is the record button, and I want to find my caps lock, but I believe that is like a variety of aperture
It's exposure
or something like that.
now.
Yeah. Why? Like, yes, it'll look rad on your desk, but why don't you just put like a mat with a bunch of like photography terms on it? Why do you have to confuse your keyboard? What's the point?
You guys in the commenters are zero fun. None of you have any whimsy.
No, you know what? It's like, okay, but Jordan, you are kind of being a dummy because because by this point in your life, using a computer for work, you're supposed to have basically memorized everything, right? Like, do you look at like,
where's the delete?
Where's the R key? Where's the U key? Where's the X key? No, you don't.
I don't know what order the F keys are in. Is 7 before 4? Oh no. If I keep going left to right, then I find F5, F6, and then F7.
So that says something about Mac users and what kind of computers they need. Yes, no. So the idea is like, mechanical keyboards are fun. I don't really get into it. My kid built a few. It's neat that you can buy a keyboard, you can put in the keys, you can get different levels of resistance when you're pushing them, different heights, different amounts of keys if you want full size or compact sizes, and you can change the patterns on them. It's just fun. It's fun customization, and
that's what this is. It's just fun. Like you
let
can
your
just
camera flag fly. Yeah.
If you want, you can just buy that red button for your escape.
Jordan does not like fun.
Red button. That's true. I don't at all. But I just keep going like, I've seen these where it's like actual commands for various pieces of software. That makes sense to me. But just replacing it with something else arbitrary, I don't understand, which means I'm old and irrelevant.
I'm a low profile keyboard guy.
I'm gonna order like a sticker set on Amazon, and I'm gonna go over and I'm gonna cover Jordan's keyboard with all these custom stickers. There you go.
For learning how to type, where it covers up all the keys, so you have to remember.
I'm gonna cover up all his keys with little anime pictures, and we'll see how he struggles.
Anyway,
It'll be great.
I'm a low profile guy, but my wife likes the mechanical keys, so I have appreciation for it.
You know what? These keys actually really remind me. The color scheme that they're showing is very reminiscent of Kodak film, right? Going along with the sort of camera analog kind of feel.
And it's the Leica font.
Why are you trying so hard to segue these news stories together?
No,
they don't
what do you
have
mean
to.
trying?
Did someone criticize your segues last week?
Nobody.
This is just called natural talent. So Kodak is kind of well known in the industry for making a lot of motion picture films. And apparently people are buying this motion picture film in big, huge cans and then respooling it. Of course, that's totally normal. I mean, a lot of companies are doing that. The analog industry is now full of respooled film, but some people are buying it in a more disingenuous way to make a profit, aren't they, Jaron?
Yeah. So yesterday, as of recording this, so that would have been Monday, Reflex Lab, which is a respooler and photographic, analog company out of China, posted a blog post where they said that they would no longer be able to offer some of their respooled 35 millimeter motion picture stock because Kodak is more strictly cracking down on respoolers. So, this is because these people were buying them saying that they were making motion pictures with them. And that is where Kodak gives a discount, because Kodak knows that companies that are shooting films like movies need their budgets are very strict, and any changes to the amount that something costs may make someone just switch to shooting it in digital.
Right.
Additionally, they kind of just want to support the continued use of film. So that's what they do. Well, some companies were buying film from Kodak, claiming it was going to be used for motion pictures, but then just respooling it. So they were getting that discount and then undercutting the companies that were paying for it legitimately. Well, now Kodak says no. And we've actually saw some of the forms that some of these companies have been given, where it's like, what film are you shooting? What films stocks do you plan to use for exactly how many scenes? And prove it by sending us a letter from your production company and agent that you are actually making this film. So Reflex Lab posted a very long, very, very long story about how they are like essentially appealing to the humanity of the people who like to buy their cheap respooled film, and just like saying essentially like Kodak is ruining the industry for everyone. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, man, you are being disingenuous here. So I'm not really sure that's the case. When I wrote this, I was sort of afraid that I was going to get ostracized for essentially making it clear that I did not agree with Reflex Labs' take. So far, I have not been ostracized. So one of the things that does look bad, though, on the Kodak side, is that Kodak Alaris, which is one of the Kodak brands that manages film, they got purchased by a private equity firm last year. And private equity is known for squeezing every last little penny out of anything. So the timing feels related. I'm not sure.
It probably is.
And this is one of those things where it's like, sure, private equity does suck. However, in this case, I think they're fully within their rights.
Right.
That's the story.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing there is it's interesting that it was actually Christopher Nolan who was taking the film and respooling it, and that's how he was able to get away with it for such a long time, because he's known throughout the industry. No, I'm just talking out of my ass. No, I mean, it sucks because for Kodak, like, putting their film into the film industry is also their advertising. Like, you don't see Kodak movies anymore, but man, do you get a lot of articles when a new film drops that was actually shot on motion picture film. So, yeah, you're cutting into, that's essentially why they're able to subsidize it, it is really their branding at this point. So yeah, I think it kind of sucks.
Yep, there we go. All right. This next section, which is going to end our section here, is I'm calling the Canon block. And that's because we've got 3 Canon stories, mostly because Canon, they had their earnings reports last week. So a lot of stuff came out of that. So let's first talk about, there's 3 here. Let's do the R6 II propelled Canon to #1 in mirrorless and full frame cameras in 2024 in the United States. So Canon has been saying for years, with some clever language that allowed Sony to essentially say, no, that's not true, that they were #1 for whatever reason. They'll say something like #1 in interchangeable lens cameras. And Sony's like, well, that's because you sell a bunch of those crummy DSLRs. You're not actually #1. And then another time it was like they're #1 in mirrorless, but Sony's like, well, we're #1 in full frame mirrorless. So that's the one people actually care about. Well, this year, they say, in no uncertain terms, Canon is #1 in interchangeable lens cameras, #1 in mirrorless cameras, #1 in full frame mirrorless cameras, and #1 in lenses and mirrorless lenses in sales. Like, they covered the full board here with very specific terms. And I did not see a retort from Sony this time.
It's funny because like this whole battle has been ongoing for years now. We've talked about it quite a few times on the podcast, so it's always entertaining to see, where they keep going and how they keep arguing about it. I mean, the R6 Mark II, fantastic camera. It's not something that I knew the sales figures for, and of course, we can only sort of figure out the Canadian, specifically the Calgary market. With our friends at the camera store, get some idea of how these things are doing in our local market. But I mean, I was worried the Canon R6 Mark II wouldn't sell very well, so I'm glad it is, because it's a fantastic camera and it should sell well.
Yeah, that's the thing that jumped out to me for sure, is that is such a dark horse camera. Like, we haven't really talked about it since it launched, but it just checks a lot of boxes. Sorry, Jared.
No, I was just going to say, this time they said specifically the R6 Mark II.
Yeah, Mark II.
And there was one other camera, and we'll get to that in the next story. So
the R1.
There are 2 cameras that really sold big numbers for them. And it's
it
the
was
R6
not
Mark
the R1.
II. But what we'll say here, kind of that ties to this, is that Canon actually missed its profit projections for last year by a significant margin, despite the fact that they sold a bunch of units.
Right.
That
sucks.
Why do you think that is? That they wouldn't make as much profit despite selling lots of them? What camera does Canon have that would have low profit margins.
I totally stole your joke here with my last your observation here with my last joke. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's the R1, which is a ton of R&D, and they're going to sell very few units of it. But also, I do think because of that whole cluster F with the launch there, like the R5 II, a lot of people took a wait and see approach to that. Unlike if you remember the R5 launch, where everyone was like, yes, this is the camera I've been waiting for. This is the mirrorless one. I'm jumping on it right now. With the R5 II, I really got a vibe that everybody was like, I'm going to wait until this has been in a lot of people's hands before I invest in that.
You know, you sound very, very sure of yourself, Jordan, but I think you're wrong.
Really?
It's the R100.
I don't know.
The R100, they moved a ton of units because they charged $400 for it from April through December. This camera felt basically free, and they removed all of their margin from it to sell as many as possible to get as many of these small, crummy little cameras and get people into the RF mount. That's I think the long-term goal. I'm sure the R1 is part of it too. I think that has a much higher profit margin than a $400 R100. I can't imagine they're making much on this as far as percentage goes. And I think that's why their sales of camera units were so high, but their camera margins were so low.
We're bringing up the specter of a lot of worst cameras of the year in this episode. That's now 2 we've managed to hit.
What was the other one?
The Y35 Yashica. So let's see if we can talk about the FPL a little bit later. Then it's just a home run episode.
Well, before I told Jordan that I don't think he's right. Now, I don't have any proof of this, by the way, because
I'm willing to accept my wrongness. That makes way more sense than what I was saying.
Yeah, they didn't say that specifically in any of their notes. What they said, though, in their rise to number 1 in mirrorless was that this is the R6 II and entry level thing. Then like, okay, of those, it's the R100. They didn't call it out by name, but...
At least Canon is still supporting their APS-C line very well, right? Like you have a lot of options for cameras. I mean, they could use some more lenses. Yeah, they could use some more lenses, but that's everybody, right? But I mean, they at least show a strong commitment to APS-C cameras. So, I mean, I'm going to give them that, but I don't like the R100 at all.
I know you despised that camera.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
I think it's a poor value for... Even though it's $400, we actually wrote an article last April when the price cut first came. It was like $414 you could get an R100. And we're like, you can buy this camera, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, it's just going to frustrate people.
If it gets you into the system, then it gets you into the system.
Exactly,
and that's,
I think, what Canon's thinking. Yeah,
that is such a big part of holding on to your customer base is just getting them hooked into it. So maybe it's crazy. Maybe it's crazy like a fox. We'll see.
It worked with the Rebel series, and I think that's what the Canon executives are thinking again. It's like, well, but at least in my opinion, I thought the Rebel cameras were a better value at the time because I shot with an XTI for years and loved it, and eventually graduated to bigger Canon. I mean, they got me. It worked. So
the reason we didn't like the R100 is it's just all of the modern conveniences that people expect aren't there. So the Rebel, it was a good experience, even if maybe not as good as the higher end cameras. But this is just like to not have a touch screen on an entry level camera, the USB micro, all that kind of stuff. That's just going to annoy people and make them be like, photography is stupid. I'm out. Actually, no, I'm just going to buy a Yashica street camera.
All right.
So the last thing to note here is that part of their presentations, Canon said that they're recommitting to the compact camera in the sense that they are going to increase the production they can do to meet demand. The actual quote is due to the spread of SNS, which is social networking sites. I don't know why they do it like that. The SNS, I see that and I think like some sort of technical term, social networking sites. Anyway, additionally, due to the spread of social networking sites, the popularity of compact cameras that can easily capture images that differ from those of smartphones is growing among young people. As a result, we are seeing a buildup of orders, mainly for higher priced models like the PowerShot G7X Mark III. We aim to expand overall camera sales by 8.4% through increased production and supply. So Canon is like, oh God, people actually want these again. Shoot, we closed that factory in China years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that they will increase their production, but they are capped on how much they actually can increase it unless they expand their factory, which I just don't think that they're going to try and risk.
Who knows? But I mean, even if they do, it's going to leave time, and it is already leaving time for other alternatives to well up and get people into it. I mean, you kind of got to strike while it's hot. We're seeing a lot of brands now re-releasing their older cameras with new names. And yeah, I mean, and of course, we just talked about the Yashica cameras, and that's just one brand. There's so many brands of these compact point and shoots coming out. They're flooding the market. And I mean, people might pick up 1 or 2 or 3 if they're cheap enough, but I don't think people are going to want a collection of 10 point and shoot cameras. But what do I know? Maybe they do. But if you're not on it right now, it's going to be a problem. Yeah,
it's going to take a while to roll out. Okay. I want to see a rebranded Yashica camera with a Canon badge on it. I think that'd be hilarious.
Wow.
We found a way to get them to market, everyone.
All right.
72 megapixels.
Okay, so that's going to do it for the news. That was a giant block, but we are now all caught up. So let's talk about Micro Four Thirds, because we did get a brand new Micro Four Thirds camera this week.
Boy,
from OM System, the OM3. The first look has been published on the YouTube channel. Hopefully, it's going to be after we've published that video. That we're recording this before then. There we go. That's what I meant to say. We're recording this podcast before that video is published, so I have no idea what people think of it. But Chris made his thoughts known. Jordan made his thoughts known. I think it's a pretty good video. So knowing what the OM3 is, what else does Micro Four Thirds absolutely need to do in 2025? Because this didn't feel like to me enough to make up for some years of kind of stagnation.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I want to say about the OM3 is it was love at first sight. Honestly, even just seeing the presentation that they had and you see the images, like, oh man, that's beautiful. And then you get it in your hands and it is really quite beautiful. There's a lot of cameras that are designed to look vintage, so they look great on a PowerPoint presentation, but then when you actually get it in your hands, you're like, bleh, yucky, right? This thing is beautiful. It's heavy, it's metal. The dials are all beautifully machined, knurled, gorgeous, really, really nice. So the camera does feel like a classic camera, and I really appreciate that OM System decided to go that extra distance, because most companies wouldn't. They would just make something like the DF, for example, which is an abomination, right? So,
wait, you didn't like that camera?
I freaking hate that camera. I mean, look, the ZFC also does a great job of capturing that vintage heritage well. So, I mean, it's not a Nikon thing. It's just that particular camera is gross, and I never want to touch it again. But anyways, the OM3 is heavy. It's beautiful. It's in a lot of ways, like we talked about in the video, an OM1 Mark II in this small vintage body. And it is exactly one of the things that we were asking for, right? We've been saying on this podcast all the time, especially me, I'm like, I want to see vintage inspired cameras from companies that have that heritage like OM System has with the Olympus brand of cameras. I mean, it looks very much like an old school OM1 or OM2 or OM3, either way. The body's really nice. So I think it's a really nice camera. I enjoyed shooting it. I enjoy the way it feels. I think the goal that it's trying to be, it's achieved very well, but it is a niche camera because it is kind of heavy to carry around, honestly. And it's really pretty, but it's not as capable for wildlife and sports as the OM1 Mark II. So I think that's still going to be the better choice for photographers that want to do outdoor stuff, wildlife stuff. This is very much like a walk around street camera. So that's a long tirade. I'm sorry. But what I'm trying to get at is I still think that there's a lot that Micro Four Thirds can do when it comes to the compact walk-around camera. I still think we need to see smaller cameras. I think everybody was expecting a pen to come out, and it didn't.
So yeah, that actually transitions to a question I was going to ask you guys. Do you think this is the closest we're going to get to a pen revival, or will we actually see OM do that? Because I think this is as close as we're going to get. I don't think they're bringing it back.
Yeah, I really thought when we were initially pitching, a pen just seems so easy to me. You just take the sensor from an OM1, you put it in a beautiful body with the front control dial, and that is very largely what we're seeing here. The only difference is just the viewfinder placement, right? It's in the middle like an old film SLR as opposed to off on the one side, but it is so similar. I think they're going to have to find a different way, like a different form factor or something like that, and segment them a lot more. It won't make sense to have kind of what Fujifilm's doing, where they have the SLR and the rangefinder style with identical components. Fujifilm can do it because they're extremely popular cameras, but while OM is trying to build a market. I think they need to have really clear differentiation between those models. I also want to just quickly, after Chris was talking about the OM3, a little peek behind the curtain. While I was editing that episode, it's a real balancing act for me because you would start almost every subject. Like, we're going to talk about filters, but first I just want to say this camera looks great and I like how heavy it is. Anyways, we're going to talk. So it's like, how many of these do I keep? So I wound up I'm going to leave them all.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It does.
But I did think that was really funny when I was cutting it. Just like, this viewfinder here is pretty low resolution, but look at this gorgeous lines.
I was really honestly surprised at how well built and well made the OM3
It feels great.
It feels great.
It looks expensive. I think that's going to be the biggest thing we're going to see.
It is expensive.
Are going to say this is too expensive. I agree with them. Chris, you have some deep, dark thoughts about why it's priced the way it is?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it is expensive. I think people might sit on it and wait for the price to come down because OM system do tend to put big discounts on their bodies, right? And that might be something that people do, which isn't very good for sales. I mean, you don't want to have a camera release and then wait for it to drop in price before you buy it. Like that's not good for your profit margins. But I think if people put it in their hands, it's easy to fall in love with it, and you cannot sort of. You cannot underappreciate how important a factor that is, right? You can't underestimate the impact that coveting a camera will have, where people might be like, what, a few more $100, but I love the camera. And I think that's there. I do think that there's space for a pen camera still, because to be fair, the OM3 is not really any smaller than OM1, 2. It just has a smaller grip and, lack of grip. So it makes it smaller and a different body design, but it's heavy and it's not that compact. It's not super pocketable. So I think that they could make a pen camera. Also, the OM3 does have a lot of cost cutting in it. It does have a fairly low res viewfinder. That was unfortunate. 2.36 million dots. And I also think, I don't know if this is cost cutting or if it's an actual engineering issue, but with the body being smaller, it has a different IBIS unit and a different shutter mechanism than the OM1 Mark II. And often when we see that, it's because they can't physically fit it inside a certain size of body.
I'm okay
so perhaps
with
that's
that.
Sure, I'm okay with that too, but that makes me then think if they come out with a pen series, I would want it to be really small. And I mean, yeah, same sensor, sure, that's probably what'll happen, but is it even going to have IBIS? Or if it does, is it going to be a reduced system?
We know that it's possible to make IBIS that small because Fujifilm did it.
Sure. But does OM have access to that? So I think there's absolutely a space for pen. I think that's exactly still the kind of cameras we need. I think they came up with this first, but I'd really like to see an uber sexy, made to the same standard as this camera that you can fit in your pocket with a small zoom or primes. And I think that would do very well, even if the IBIS and the shutter get even worse, who knows? And I don't expect the EVF's going to be any better than the OM3s. If it even has one, which it better.
Well, I really do think there needs to be something in between that like $1,000 and $2,000 mark there. So here's my question to you. How was it a smart decision to put a stacked sensor in this? Because when Chris is reviewing it, he's like, it's got 6 frames per second mechanical, which is totally fine for a camera in this class. But the thing can shoot 120 frames per second.
So you're saying they could have saved money by reducing the
if
power
they'd used the
it.
older 20 megapixel sensor and got this down to like $1,500, $1,600, would it be a more popular camera? I think it would be.
Yes. It didn't.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Sensor.
But we always complain about, why did they downgrade this? But yeah, as you say, like the OM1 Mark II is better suited right off the gate. It's obvious that it's better suited for wildlife and sports. Beyond just the sensors, like the mechanical shutter speeds and stuff. It's the handling. It's the big grip. It's the bigger body. So, yeah, it's a good point. I don't know.
So you mentioned earlier, Chris, that you used the word differentiation, and that ties to what you also just said, or what Jordan just said regarding the sensor. And I think the biggest problem that Micro Four Thirds overall has is that we're all using the same sensor that hasn't seen major enhancements or developments in years. Like, I know resolution's not everything, but I need more than 20. Mm-hmm. I would love 30 to 35. That's it. Just get me to 10 more and I will feel much better.
Yeah.
And we're not getting that, and we haven't gotten that, and it's because Sony's making these sensors. I don't know if there's a particular reason why we're not able to put a little bit more onto this smaller sensor, but I really, that's the thing. You can differentiate it by making one worse, as Jordan said, and reducing the price, because 6 frames per second mechanical is just fine for this type of camera. That would have been fine to me. That would have been a differentiator. But I also would have preferred a slower sensor, higher resolution in this type of camera.
True, but I mean, at the same time, like having OM Systems autofocus is fine, but it's not class leading. And so having the stack sensor in the OM3 does help in that regard. You know, you're going to get the same performance out of it.
Yeah.
It's also nice for video features. Not that these cameras are video cameras, unfortunately. They still haven't seemed to have been able to really get to grips with proper video quality. But the stack sensor does give us benefits for autofocus. It does give us benefits if we do want to do bursts. And it does help out when it comes to the computational photography, which is such a big deal on OM camera. I mean, that's really, to me, one of their main advantages is the computational mode. So I kind of want to see that, and I'd be okay with the megapixels being lower in order to maintain that quality. I'm kind of starting to shift. I mean, I love higher megapixels too, and I'm starting to kind of shift. Like, for me, larger sensors, that's where I would go if I wanted more megapixels. I really like the images out of the OM3. I thought they were beautiful. And I mean, I like the grain effect. I like the color filters that they did. So yeah, I'm okay with it personally, although I get where you're coming from. I just don't think Micro Four Thirds, it's not its forte. I don't know if we're ever going to see 30 or 35 megapixel sensors anytime soon.
But the same type of argument has been made for like full frame cameras. We've said in the past, well, this isn't full frame's forte. We're not expecting, but then we get it. Yeah. So, but we're not getting it out of Micro Four Thirds, and it keeps making it look like it's farther and farther behind.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is, like, I still, for me, the holy grail would be, whether OM System does this first or Panasonic, the holy grail for me to bring back something like the GM series of cameras, which are uber small, really compact. And by doing that, I accept it better have an EVF, dear God, it better. But by doing that, I accept that we are going to lose some things, some features because of the physical size, and we are going to lose some features because of the cost. And so I'm okay with losing that. To me, I see a new modern GM5 or Pen being like a really high-end point-and-shoot craze camera, where you get nice manual controls, you get better image quality that's actually quite appreciable, but it still has the cachet of this pocket-sized camera with a little electronic flash. I think that would be really popular. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of my mindset. I'd rather accept some losses of features in order to see that happen. I don't know. Are they going to do it? I don't know.
So I have a couple things going back to the initial question, and you bringing up Panasonic, Chris, because I do think it's going to be a while before we see, you know, another mid-range camera from OM System. So, and Jaron, you were saying like the lack of resolution is a real concern. So here's my pitch for something I think would be super hot, is Panasonic to bring back the GX line with their new 25 megapixel sensor. It's way faster than the old 20 megapixel sensor Micro Four Thirds are using, not as fast as the stacked one on the OM1, but we got a 25 megapixel sensor there. It's a rangefinder style design, still very compact with a mechanical shutter still on it. Now, obviously, Chris's concern is like, I hope they don't just make it all like very video centric on it, but there is a real opening there. So I could see that really taking off with that, you know, going up from a point and shoot audience you were talking about, Chris. The other thing I want to talk about quickly that Micro Four Thirds needs is new exciting glass. Like we got 3 new lenses with this OM launch, and they are all just updates on existing optical formulas. Panasonic last year brought out some Micro Four Thirds glass. Same deal there, just kind of like redesigning and optimizing older formulas. So I would love to see, you know, with a classic style like the OM3, I'd love to see like a brand new, you know, like a new 1.4 or something like that in between the 1.2s and the 1.8s that has like a retro style from OM. And from Panasonic, I want them to make another show-off lens. For the longest time lately, they've been doing like a lot of very practical in L-mount and Micro Four Thirds, affordable, you know, very useful, but not exciting optics. Like I'd love to see them do something like their, you know, 42.5 1.2 lens, or when they first brought out the L-mount, they had that 51.4 that was like enormous for a 51.4, but it was gorgeous. So I'd like to see them do, you know, something just saying like, we're taking this business really seriously, and video shooters, you might not see all the advantages of this lens. This is for photographers.
I want a new updated 12 to 32 zoom lens from them that's better optically, even though the first one was pretty good, and where the ring doesn't just fall off. The zoom ring doesn't just fall off.
That's a key feature.
Yeah, I know, but I love that
okay,
lens.
one more version 2 lens we're willing to accept.
I want a version 3 now because even the version 2, it falls apart.
I think the area where the reason we're not seeing much as far as optics go in Micro Four Thirds is because Tamron and Sigma backed out.
Don't make it.
They don't make them anymore. And so here's how you get around that. Sigma is easily the most creative lens manufacturer right now. Just pay Sigma to make you a lens
Sure.
that you can then brand as OM. Be like, we're going to give you the funding to make it. We'll put our branding on it. It'll be you'll have made it for us. That's it. You don't have to get involved.
Yeah.
But make us something cool.
That's what happened with my favorite Olympus lens, that 75mm 1.8. It's a Sigma design.
Yeah. More. We know those engineers love making great optics. So give them the challenge of working in Micro Four Thirds and compensate them for it.
Yay!
And then also, I don't know how to get around the sensor issue. Like I think 25 is still too low.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's going to be basically up to Sony. Although Panasonic hasn't said, but implied a lot that 25 megapixel chip is not a Sony sensor.
There is one more,
which would make sense because it took them an entire camera model to figure out how to even use that sensor. The GH6 it didn't work properly, and then it just killed on the G9 and GH7.
But Panasonic doesn't have a lot of incentive to go higher megapixels because for video-centric cameras, where they're at is good, it's gotta be right? OM. OM has maybe some more so, but then I just wonder if the executives are sitting there looking at it like being like, okay, how much further are we going to take the OM1? So, I mean, I hope they always support it. It's a great camera. I love using it. And there's a dedicated following of people who want to use it in a very professional manner. But it is mostly outdoor pursuits, wildlife sports, that kind of stuff where they excel. I don't know many people, I'm sure there's some of you out there that are. I'm not trying to give you a hard time or say that you're wrong, but I can't imagine there's a lot of people out there shooting studio portraits and weddings and stuff with Micro Four Thirds. And now, of course, I've just gotten a whole row of hate messages.
Yeah, like I said, they're existing. There's dozens of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, dozens of them. Yeah, but this is what I'm getting is maybe the executives looking and being like, look, the future is, especially with this push for point and shoot craze, we got to use Micro Four Thirds as more of a niche kind of product and make it compact cameras.
The thing is,
cool designs. Yeah,
and birders want resolution too.
Yeah, like I want an OM3. I want to walk around with it. It's really nice. Like I absolutely have to say, like it really gelled with me. So it's awesome. And I kind of like that, although it's expensive, I do kind of like that it's not giving up all the stuff out of the flagship camera, although critically the EVF is the one thing I'm disappointed in. But anyways.
The one thing, so just because the topic is what we want to see from Micro Four Thirds, and we talked a lot of hardware, the one last thing I'd love to throw in is OM with their firmware. They got to step up existing users because when the OM1 Mark II came out, we said, look, some of this is clearly hardware based, but some of it looks like it could definitely be firmware. We haven't seen those features come to the original OM1. Now with the new OM3, we've got some new software features like those new video profiles and stuff. Are we going to see those come to the OM1, OM1 Mark II?
Like
show
Sony
some love to your existing users.
Yeah,
it'd be nice to see them update their video in general too.
The video thing was super weird, Jordan.
It's got to happen.
It very much upset you.
Yeah, well, years of me saying like this seems like such an easy fix, and it's so frustrating to have to work around it. And now we're years later. I think like when did the OM1 come out? 3 years, 4 years ago, and we're still dealing with the same basic software problems. Yeah.
Well, and Olympus had those issues even before that, right? So they really haven't updated anything in a long time in that regard. Yeah.
So the takeaway here is that the OM3 is very nice.
Very nice. I love it.
Very good looking.
Very good.
Heavier than you might expect.
Yes.
Very well
Not
made.
comfortable to hold with heavy glass, but beautiful in hand with light glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we need Micro Four Thirds to go do more. I feel like I would be less hard on Micro Four Thirds if we got something like a lot new over the previous 2 years, but it's been too long. So it feels extra much like, okay, cool, thank you, and then is what I keep finding myself saying. I should cut them more slack, but I don't think I can. Okay. What have you been up to?
Who wants to go first?
Jordan.
I'll go first then. Oh man,
Okay,
you guys. Not a lot. It's been busy. I mean, one thing is, we were in California for the Samsung launch. We had a lot of fun there. That was a couple weeks ago now. But I always miss Lunar New Year. We miss shooting it, which is always a great event. We just never works out that we get down to shoot it.
It's been 10 years, I checked, since we shot on Lunar New Year's.
And we were going to do a podcast last week, but, it was too busy. We just couldn't make it work with all the stuff that was going on. So I'm sorry that we missed Lunar New Year. And big shout out to Wotencraft. Look at that. My collection of coasters, Year of the Snake. There we go. So we got a new snake coaster for the table. So, I hope everybody makes tons of money. Gong si fa
Snakes and rabbits don't get along, but still.
Yeah. Xinan Kuai La, Happy New Year to everybody. So I'm sorry I missed it. And what else? Jordan? Oh, I know. I went down a dark path, and I want to talk about it. And I've been bugging Jared about it. And,
okay. Trench Crusade?
Yeah, you guys know how much I love the lore behind Catholicism because it's scary, and I love hell, and I love religious battles, and anyways, this is where I'm going with it. So this popped up, and I Warhammer 40K is cool and everything like that, and I don't have much time to play games right now, but I did start playing Dawn of War again, old school. It's been pretty fun, but there's a new game out called Trench Crusade. It's a tabletop game, and I want someone to play with me, and nobody will play with me. And it's very cool because it's like
Jordan, play with
hell on earth and tabletop fighting between the heretics and the holies. And I think it looks cool. The art's really cool. And so I went down
played like a tabletop thing, Jaron. So the amount of frustration Chris would have trying to explain this, spending his entire high school, as we've already gotten to, perfecting his craft at this, that seems like a
Chris,
frustrating opportunity for both of us.
Like
I play tabletop games, like I play Pathfinder every week.
Yeah, I am super jealous because there's no one here to play with. And like I played BattleTech, I played Warhammer, Warhammer 40K. I had 2 Warhammer armies, a 40K army, sold it all, got rid of it all, painted, so how many hours of my life did I spend painting that stuff? And now I want to just jump in and do it all over again. So, but there's no one to play with. So it's really sad.
I'd play with you if you weren't living in the
but you don't live here and I don't live there.
Yeah,
just over a webcam works great, I'm sure.
No, I don't want to move to the States. And you'd freeze to death up here. So I don't know what to do.
We could all just move to Japan. Jordan, what have you been up to?
Someone play Trench Crusade with me.
Well, speaking of playing a game with someone, I got to finally realize a long-lost dream. Way back over a decade ago, me and my buddy, former guitar player Chris McGecky, spent a weekend playing Portal 2 co-op, and I had a great time, and then I stopped playing video games forever. And I have started again with my son. He is old enough, and I'm going to get through Portal 2 co-op, and we are having a blast. And I know it's ancient and no one cares anymore, but it is just it's so well designed. You feel like you're brilliant every time you solve something, even though clearly other people have as well. So if you haven't done it, I recommend it enormously to sit on the couch beside a friend and play through it because it's been a nice.
I'm going to get your 9-year-old to play Trench Crusade with me. Hopefully he's okay with like horrifically gory hell art and just, pain and people broken on the wheel and stuff. Is that cool?
Sure.
No?
Yeah.
Yes.
Whatever.
He's mine now.
I've been working on a perfect grade Gundam for over a month now.
You like Gundam?
This is a nerdy what have you been up to this week?
But I've been spending a lot of time playing Marvel Rivals. So I'm having a lot of fun in Rivals. It is a great game. If anyone listening likes Rivals, I'm an Invisible Woman main, and I am having a blast. Yeah. I can out-heal. If anyone who plays Marvel Rivals knows that most Invisible Women are not very good. Like, they don't heal very well. I've been getting at least 20k healing. My best game is 32k healing. So I can play Invisible Woman very well. That's
do you know what's a fascinating segue that relates to all this? I know we're going on and on about this, but if anybody out there gets this reference, they're my new best friends. Sorry, Jordan. I haven't really played much of it yet, but I bought for $2. I bought Warhammer Shadow of the Horned Rat, which is an old school PC game. We're talking like 1998 or 5 or something like that. Like, it's ancient. Yeah, and I played this as a kid. It is such a cool game. It's terrible, but the graphics are garbage, but there's just something about it that's so fun. The music's great.
Nostalgia.
The voice acting's cool. The interludes are great. So if anybody, gels with Warhammer Shadow of the Horned Rat, you're my new best friend. Really cool. And I'm also going to play Dark Omen whenever I get time to do this, which is never.
I do have one more thing to say that is related to what we cover on this podcast, and that's next week we will not be recording again due to scheduling issues.
What?
But if anyone is going to support the channel at all and make me feel good about myself, they're going to watch a video that I'll publish on the 15th.
Ooh, yes.
That's right.
I made a video by
It's
myself
very good.
mostly. It's not. It's fine.
It is. There's so much good information in there.
Add some more star wipes.
Okay, I'm not doing that. But that is going to be your consolation prize for no podcast is on the 15th on Saturday. I will publish a video.
And things will be a little sparse on the main feed as well for the next little bit. But
Yeah, what do
don't
we
worry.
have, like 12 minutes left for tech support?
No, we have plenty of time left for tech support, of which the first one is actually directly related to what we talked about this week.
It's about Warhammer.
It is not about Warhammer. I have a speak pipe from Erica.
Hi, PetaPixel. Erica here from Virginia. I've been trying to find the perfect purse camera for a long time, and with the reemergence of compact cameras, I'm kind of thinking about what's next. For a while, I was using the X100V, but 35 millimeter is garbage. Chris is correct. The ZF is great, but it's a little bulky and heavy to just throw in my purse every day. Recently, I've really fallen in love with the Nikon One system. I get why it didn't take off, but I'm now carrying the V3 in my bag with the 18.5 millimeter lens every day, and it's fantastic. It takes incredible, candid photos with the best moment mode or whatever, and I'm blown away at how good the pictures look, despite it being, a 1-inch sensor or whatever. Evangelizing aside, though, do you have any retrospective thoughts about the Nikon One system? Do you think we're going to see a reemergence of compact interchangeable lenses? Because I've absolutely fallen in love. Sorry for the long message. Thanks. Love the show.
All right, I take it back. Forget Shadow of the Horned Rat. Erica is my new best friend. 35 millimeter lenses absolutely suck.
Well, you better love the Nikon One system as well to get this friendship.
You know what? I
start.
do love the Nikon One. It was such a funny system. I feel like it kind of if it came out now, it would be really cool and exciting, But the Nikon One system was very cool because at the time it offered the ability to shoot speeds, actual burst speeds that we couldn't touch before, because the sensor was so small and it scanned quickly. And they were neat. They were compact. They were in a lot of cases full featured. It was sad that they eventually took the EVFs away from the V series, but I liked the V1, the V2. They had that, and really cool lenses, really good lenses. All interchangeable. It was a neat little idea, and the AW1, probably the best underwater camera.
I've been beating that drum for years now.
Sure. Yeah. It kicks the crap image quality wise out of any of the, tough cameras or Nikon's other underwater point and shoot cameras or Pentax's stuff, because it was good. It was a big system. It kind of was reminiscent of the Nikonos. It is a neat idea, and kudos to Nikon. They jumped in and actually supported that line a lot longer than a lot of people thought they would. And I don't know that it really paid off for them, and obviously it got discontinued. But yeah, if you can get your hands on some of the Nikon One stuff, you might find it really enjoyable. So
this made me immediately think when we were in Tokyo last year to go see the Nikon building and we were shooting the Z52. One of the guys had a Nikon One with a Voigtlander lens that he had adapted to it.
Yeah.
And he was just having a blast with it. And
instant street cred.
Yeah. It was super cool. So you're not the only one who feels this way about the One system. I mean, I'm sure they're like the people who take portraits with Micro Four Thirds, dozens of you. I I don't know. Like, it would be lovely if Micro Four Thirds could kind of take that banner.
I'd prefer that. Yeah,
but they can't for whatever reason. We haven't gotten anything like that. I know
they could tomorrow. They just
saying can't is the wrong way to say it.
Yeah,
we
don't
haven't
get me started.
seen it. They keep making their cameras bigger for whatever reason and not embracing what makes Micro Four Thirds so compelling is being small. So that's who I think all three of us would like to see do something like the Nikon one again and give us.
Yeah,
what? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, people might not remember, it was a Type 1 sensor. This was the first, the only interchangeable lens built around that. So it is kind of fun. Like you mentioned, person with the Voigtlander lens, you get a 2.7 times crop. So you can make a small lens like a short telephoto. With that was kind of the thinking behind that system. And that is kind of cool. But I do think Micro Four Thirds could absolutely fill that gap. Just very fast reading sensors, compact, affordable lenses. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Speaking of Voigtlander, actually, that's another company that you could work with to make lenses for Micro Four Thirds. They'd be manual focus, but who cares? They do that for Canon and Nikon and Fujifilm and Sony already, and those are really cool lenses. I'm sorry. I'm just full of really good ideas.
Yeah, there you go.
We used to shoot with the Voigtlander .95s on a GH4 way back in the day. They made some Micro Four Thirds exclusive formulas.
Yeah. I mean, again, anything with that short flange distance, Micro Four Thirds as well, you can adapt a lot of stuff to it. So it could be very cool. But I mean, any camera that gives you that point and shoot aesthetic and the point and shoot experience and the compact pocket experience, but also gives you the cool factor of being able to change lenses, I think would do very well in the industry right now.
Yeah, totally. All right, next one's an email from Tim. Have you been getting any info about how Trump's tariffs would affect the camera industry, given the dominance of Japanese companies? Will a $2,000 camera instantly increase to $2,400, or will it be more complicated than that? Tim, we've actually, because you sent this email last year before he took office again, and as if you've been paying any attention at all to global politics, nothing that he says happens exactly how he says it, and things are basically a seesaw. We get something new every 6 hours, it sounds like. So to that end, we can't tell you because we don't know. Apparently, China has a 10% tariff. I'm not exactly sure what it specifically applies to. A lot of stuff is made not in China, but in Taiwan, and then it is assembled either in Taiwan, Thailand, or in Japan. So it wouldn't necessarily fall, but then again, it depends. Like they could choose to. We don't know. We're trying to get into it. I mean, we might have an article up by the time this podcast is out, getting some commentary from companies that are based in China, like DJI. But
how I understand it is it doesn't really matter where the components come from, because nothing in the world comes from one place anymore, right? Correct. So it's all over the place. What really matters is the country of origin, which is where it is assembled, packaged, and then shipped from. So as I would understand it, being, a border guard for 30 years myself.
It's your third job.
Yeah, my third job. The tariff will apply if it's on the list, if that comes from, if you look on the box and it says made in China, if there's a tariff on electronic cameras, if it says made in China, then it's going to be subject to that extra price, Even if it's made by a Japanese company, doesn't matter. So it's really the product's origin. As I understand it, that's what will affect the tariff. So luckily, Canada doesn't make any cameras.
For Canadian-made cameras, which is a huge industry here.
By the way, you saw that, right?
Well, delayed, suspended, not called off, suspended.
We'll see. Whatever.
Jesus. Anyways, but yes, country of origin is what matters as far as I understand. So yeah, that's what you want to look for. So yeah, you could buy a Japanese camera that's made in China. It'll have a tariff on it if it's on the list, right?
But there aren't a ton of those. So
no.
All right. Another one is an email from Michael Cox. I'll be super interested to see what you three have to say about Fujifilm's fixed lens GFX, which is rumored. I want to point this out, by the way. It's rumored to be about the size of an X Pro body. Given that they can do away with an interchangeable mount, I assume the back focus I assume move the back focus closer. There we go. Got spat that out. With a new design optical formula, it should be as compact, but with the larger, almost medium format sensor of the GFX series. And I have a 100S. I like how he says that because Fujifilm calls it a large format sensor. And he calls it an almost medium format sensor. One of the drawbacks of the GFX is weight. I hurt my back doing a hike, not from falling, but from carrying in a shoulder bag my GFX body and one lens, the 23mm. I'm now getting such great results from my X100VI that the GFX is sitting at home much more. But if I had a compact GFX, anyway, the thing I think Fujifilm is getting wrong with this camera is the focal length. I mean, how would you know? It's rumored and we don't have any information. Anyway, I mean, I'll probably save up and get one, but a 35mm lens, 28 equivalent full frame is not going to in the current direction like a Enrico and others with the new normal of 43. With a 100 megapixel sensor, however, cropping is not so big a deal. So before you answer this, I do want to make it clear. This camera has not been announced. We have no information about it. In fact, this camera, as far as we're concerned, is a dream of what people would like, but we have no idea if it's real. With that said, please, you may answer the question.
It's one of the more popular rumors on the market right now. I don't know, like part of me is like, why would you want a limited camera like this? But the X100 did so well. It's going to still be pricey no matter what. You're paying for a fixed lens camera. You know, like it would have to be quite compact. I hope it has a 28mm equivalent. I hope it doesn't have a 35, and not just because of my proclivities, but also I do think going wider is better with a high megapixel sensor because you can crop it tighter, as Michael did say. I mean, that's a good point.
I mean the X100VI is the same dealio. Like I crop my pictures from that all the time.
Sure, but it's 35 cropped, right? Like it'd be nice to have the option to shoot landscapes with this camera. Yes. I hope it's a 24mm lens equivalent, frankly. That would be cool for like walking around doing travel landscapes and street scenes and then having the option to crop it a little bit tighter. That I would see the appeal of. I don't know. I mean, if it does exist and it does come out, obviously it's exciting to play with as a fun thing. But my gut instinct is it might be fun and cool and neat, but I don't know that I would really consider it practical. We'll see. We'll see.
My thoughts really are they could price this the same as a Q3, a Q3 43 and say, look, we've got a lot more resolution here available for that. But I strongly suspect if they do that the lens is going to be a lot slower. So you're not going to wind up with like stupid shallow depth of field. Again, my guess on this camera, it's going to be all about resolution. So I hope it's a wider lens. So you actually can take advantage of that a little bit. But I think it'll do well. I think anything that's enthusiast-based and small, and especially if they make it really, really pretty, like an X Pro 3, I think it'll do great. But it might not be like the most functional photographic tool, but it'll sure be a nice status symbol.
Sure. I mean, for me, the key is really going to be the size. You can only miniaturize it so much given the large sensor, but, even like the 50R barely covers body-wise the lens mount. But if you're getting rid of that lens mount and you're making a fixed optic, that goes out the window, right? As long as you can fit the sensor, it would have to have IBIS. Like it's got to. I really think it does. And if it does and it's small, I could see that being a really cool, as I said, travel landscape kind of camera. That could be cool. Like wandering streets of Tokyo with something like that would be awesome. Super cool. So we'll see. I keep saying we'll see a lot. It's all conjecture.
Yeah, like will we? I don't know. Next one's an email from Ron. Just watched your excellent review of the Nikon 28-400. Excellent, thank you. Wondering if you have the chance to review Tamron's lens. I wonder how it will compare to Nikon's. I have the Nikon 24-200 and it's a good lens, but I would like a longer reach. I generally use my camera for travel. Any thoughts on getting longer reach would be much appreciated. Sorry, he says in the title of his email, which I didn't put in this thing. So if you don't know what he's talking about, give me 1 second and I'll pull up Ron's email.
We would love to review all the lenses.
Tamron Z 50-400. So it's comparing the Nikon 28-400.
We liked that lens a lot. Like we've reviewed it, just not in Z mount. But yeah, I do think, well, first of all, it's going to be a little brighter at the telly end, which is where you really need that. But we were fans of that, actually more so than the new 50-300, I think, Chris. You found the 50-4 more useful?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like once you're getting into super zoom territory where the lens is going to be slow, might as well just go all in. So, and there's a lot of appeal for that normal to, a wildlife kind of range. You're kind of getting into that. Not really. They're still a little slow at that telephoto range for that, but I do like that idea. We actually talked and sort of alluded to it in our weird zooms video, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think super zooms are great. I would still prefer like a 28 to 400. I'd prefer that personally. It might as well have just the ultimate flexibility. But we love the Tamron lenses. We try to review them as often as we can when we have time.
Another email from Anonymous. I've been shooting digital mainly with manual focus lenses for the past 15 years. First, I used Voigtlander, Zeiss, and Leica M lenses adapted to my Sony mirrorless cameras. Eventually, I switched over to Leica M10 because I got sick of ugly focus peaking and or having to constantly punch in to check focus. The rangefinder patch was just much quicker. But lately, I've been missing an EVF and tilt-out screen. What would you all consider to be the best digital camera right now for manual focus lenses? The Nikon ZF seems to have quite a few unique features for manual focusing aids. The focus confirmation box that turns green when you're in focus seems particularly amazing, rangefinder-like, if you will. But you need a third-party adapter with electronic contacts. Are there any other cameras I should consider, or is the ZF the best one for manual focusing out there right now? Is it possible other camera manufacturers will follow Nikon's lead with new types of manual focusing aids? Would love to get your advice. I'll remain anonymous so Leica gangs don't come for me with pitchforks. Thanks so much.
What I'm going to say about this, it's anonymous. What I'm going to say about this, I read this ahead of time because, of course, we always try to research the questions we're going to answer, and I totally forgot to then do the testing. So I'm sorry, because I think the company that makes the best manual focus aid personally is Canon. I love they have two triangles that go farther apart and come together, and I love that.
Isn't that only on their video cameras?
No, it's on the photo cameras as well, and it's
Rs,
marvelous.
Yeah, it's on the R series. I love it. I don't know if it would work with manual focusing glass, where with no electrical connection. I don't know if it does. And that's what I was going to test.
Made a face about.
Yeah,
that.
this is exactly the notes I had. So look at us together, Chris. I can tell you it needs electrical contacts for that to work properly. So there's a lot of manual focus native RF glass, or if you can get electrical contact EF and then plop that on an EF to RF adapter and carry through.
Would Voigtlanders, which have electrical contacts, support this? You would think,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. And that's the big appeal is, super fast lenses and being able to use that assist tool. So that's great. But if you do have something with no electrical connections, then I think the ZF and also on the Z6 III, the ability to just have it punch in on faces is so useful for manual focus glass. I love that feature. So Canon would be my first ranked if you can get that communication. And then second with dumb lenses would be the Nikon.
Yeah.
All right. This last one is from Mike. It's kind of long, but it's an email, so I'll read it. I hope you don't mind my emailing you. Do not mind, Mike.
Of course not.
I'm a hobbyist photographer based in
You son of a...
The audacity. How dare you?
I am a hobbyist photographer based in California and I'm looking to improve my skills. I've enjoyed watching PetaPixel videos and podcasts, and I have been watching Chris and Jordan for several years, from the Camera Store to DP Review and now PetaPixel.
That does not forgive you from emailing us without permission.
And I have found these to be very useful and educational. I primarily use Panasonic gear. I have my old G85 Micro Four Thirds, which I started my hobby with, and I also have the original full frame S5. I have thought about trading both cameras in for a newer Lumix S5 II, but one of the recommendations I've often heard from professional photographers is to invest in better lenses instead of upgrading camera bodies. I have a mix of prime and zooms for both cameras, but my zooms are mainly kit zooms, limited to 3.5 and 5.6 f-stops. So I've decided to find an upgraded zoom for my S5 first. In my search for a good, versatile L-mount lens, I considered the 24 to 105 f4, the 24 to 70 2.8, and the 70 to 200 f4. Then I came across the new Samyang Rokinon 35 to 150 f2 to 2.8 lens for L-mount. It looks very interesting with some very nice coverage from 35 to 150, and we bright enough for most situations with being f2 to 2.8. Soon after, I saw your YouTube video on the new Sigma 28 to 105.
Great lens.
Which Chris and Jordan found so good they included this in their lens in their best of 2024. I hope you get a chance to make a comparison review between the new Sigma 28-105 2.8 and the Samyang 35 to 150 2.8 for L-mount. The two lenses are so similar in specs except for Sigma being wider and the Samyang being longer. The size and weight are comparable. Off the bat, I see two issues with both. These appear to be heavy beasts of lenses compared to what I've been used to, and both are pretty expensive. $1,400 US for the Samyang and $1,500 for the Sigma. I know PetaPixel team rates the Sigmas highly. Have you had the opportunity to test the 35-150? If so, what are your thoughts?
We love you, Mike. I'm sorry that we made fun of you.
Just don't ever email us again.
Yeah, don't just common courtesy. We have not had a chance to test the Samyang 35-150 f2 to 2.8, which the Tamron we love. Are they the same lens? I don't know. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't know. But I'd like to test it because there might be different coatings. There, who knows what? Motor, yeah, all that kind of stuff. The Sigmas are great. We love the 28-105 2.8. To answer your first question, my opinion on the whole, should you buy better glass over a body? That was very important back in the day. I think nowadays it is very important to look at both because they do give you both substantial benefits. But if you're trying to shoot low light situations where you need faster shutter speeds or shallow depth of field, yeah, brighter glass is going to be the no-brainer. But do remember that going to an S5 II brings much better autofocusing performance, especially for continuous shooting and stuff like that. And that's a really appreciable thing too. And the body plays such a big part in the sensor that you get, the image quality you get. So I think you got to look at both. But anyways, S5's perfectly good camera. Yeah, that would be an interesting comparison. If this Samyang is the same as the Tamron or effectively the same, that's a really good way to go. Really is. I know it's heavy, but you can get away with one lens for a lot of work. I personally think a 28-105 2.8 though, that's a great general purpose workhorse lens. I would probably go that way myself just because I want a little bit wider.
So my thinking with this is I really want to look at the Samyang 35-150 because I am such a cheerleader for the Tamron version.
Yeah.
But we just reviewed our first Samyang lens, I think 2 months ago, maybe at this point. And they're bringing out a new lens series. So I'm really hoping that we're going to see a new version of that lens. And then I would absolutely love to shoot it out against the Tamron. Just right now, I'm a little bit wary because I strongly suspect as they're replacing older models with these new aesthetics, with the new motors, I don't want to do something that'll be outdated immediately. But that is definitely something that's on our radar because that focal length rules and it should be available in all lens mounts. So it'd be great to see an L-mount version.
All right, well, that's going to do it on tech support. For the feel-good story of the week, I just wanted to say that it is possible for zebras to change their stripes, for leopards to change their spots, because Chris actually liked a 35mm lens, and that ties in directly to what he said before about saying 35 is garbage, because he can't say that anymore about all 35s at least.
I still can, okay? So let's give context. Let's give context. So I got to play with the new Nikkor 35mm f1.2, and it's an excellent lens.
Dude, the contrast on your photos is crazy.
It's an excellent lens. Yeah, I mean, it is optically basically,
holy crap.
Look,
I looked at your samples, I was just blown away.
Well, that's talent. That has nothing to do with the optics. So
I also just found the amount of information in the frame, I found really unique and exciting. It's just all of those compositions. Dude, I was like,
okay,
man.
So look, okay. As a photographer and a reviewer, I absolutely appreciate optical performance, of course, right? And so anytime you get a lens which is corrected beautifully, has really nice bokeh, sharp results, I mean, of course, you love it. I mean, it's a nice lens. It's a premium lens. It's not cheap. It's very expensive. Very expensive, but it's beautiful. And I still don't like 35mm lenses, and I still don't like the 35mm aspect of this lens. And it's just that I just don't really enjoy the frame that you get or the look. I just feel like I always want something a little wider or a little tighter. That's just me. It's just not my favorite. But
you seem like you're backtracking here.
Yeah, no, I'm not backtracking because it's all up to optics. What makes this lens tolerable and gives it a reason to exist is that it has that f1.2 aperture, because what that does is it gives this, and that it's very good at that f1. Shut up. Is that it's very good at that f1.2 aperture, which means when you're shooting on the street, it actually gives you a really nice separation of the subject from the background. Beautiful at regular ranges. So it's a 35 millimeter that's giving me a certain look that I cannot normally get. I still don't like the focal length that much. A 50 mil 1.4 does a similar thing. But yeah, you know what? I liked it. It's optically basically perfect. It was fantastic. It's just expensive and heavy.
On 35 millimeter lenses, I liked it. Chris Nichols.
See, I want to say, like, as we wrap up this podcast, that the people that I have the absolute most respect for in this world are the ones who are just able to say, you know what, I was wrong, everyone, and I've got new information now. I've been able to change my opinion, and I think that's a beautiful thing, and we should all celebrate it whenever it happens.
I agree.
I'm still with Erica. 35 millimeter lenses suck, but if you are going to use one, this is pretty close.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you go. I feel pretty good now. Thanks for joining us this week, guys. I apologize that we will not be here next week. Again, this month is trying to kill us. We're doing our best. But we will have content for you next week, and we'll be back on the 19th to talk about pre-CP Plus and what we might want to see from that. Because CP Plus, if you don't know what that is, anyone listening, that is currently the largest and biggest, I can't talk right now.
Goodest.
It's the only trade show in the world for photography that the camera companies pay attention to now.
It's the most 35 millimeter of to
Yeah.
according to Jaron and Jordan.
Very versatile trade show.
Photokina is gone. Photo Plus in New York is gone. There's not really a show anymore except CP Plus. So this is where all of the companies, all the Japanese companies who have booths right next to each other, stand proudly next to their products because they need to be impressive. So this show is becoming more and more important. So we will talk about what we think we'd like to see then. But until then, thanks for joining us. Got nothing else? Chris loves the
Bye.
Somebody play Trench Crusade with me.